partying. And by being in this room, I'd like to consider you all fellow representatives of the power of partying and the department of partying. Thank you very much. Tonight is the second date of the Power of Partying Tour, a 50-state, 51-date U.S. tour. 51 dates because we go to Washington, D.C., so that counts as the 51st. Yeah, the first one was in Chicago, now we are here in Austin, Texas, and it means a lot to be here as the Texas state. This is a great city to represent the best of Texas, so thank you again for coming here. Thank you for having me. I'm often asked what I mean by partying, and that's always a bit of a strange question for me because I chose that word to represent this somewhat indescribable feeling because I thought everybody understood what partying was. I thought it was very natural, very inherent. It was a very one-dimensional kind of word. It was a very vast dimension that it represented, but still very clear. A 3-year-old, a 33-year-old, a 93-year-old, all these folks could have their understanding of what partying meant to them. But to break it down, since that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, we'll get into it as deep and as shallow as I can possibly go. I'm also here as a representative of the Party, which, if you're not familiar, it's the non-political political party that we began a while ago, several months ago, as an attempt to focus purely on partying, with politics a distant second where it was almost not even visible or audible. Not to say that it's not important, but I find that, as you may have found as well, there's a lot of focus on politics and very little on partying. So I'm here to focus on the partying entirely. That's what I have to offer. That is my only area of expertise as a professional partier. I have no other skills, and I don't care to develop any. I'm not proud of that, nor ashamed of it at the same time. So as far as what partying is, to me, it's celebration for no reason. And I mean that in the highest terms. If you think about the sort of classic party scenario, someone might come up to someone else in a public setting, maybe never having met that person before, and say, "Hey man, do you party?" And the idea in that interaction is that there may be no particular reason to party at that given opportune moment. There may be no specific event that they're celebrating. It might not be Friday night. It might not be New Year's Eve. It might not be either of their birthdays. And yet, they're going to celebrate. And yet, despite no reason, they're going to have fun. And I think that the best way I can compare this to another area of life is the difference between happiness and joy. You're happy for a reason. I'm happy because I went to the bathroom earlier and everything went fine. That was the reason to be happy. I'm happy because I woke up in the morning and didn't not wake up. I'm happy because something good happened, in other words. But you feel joy for no reason in particular. Joy transcends reason. Joy transcends logic, even transcends rationality. It's felt in the face of a million reasons not to be happy. You can still feel joyful, much to your own surprise oftentimes. That to me is the difference between celebration and party. You celebrate something you're happy about. You party because you exist. And I wanted to use that mindset as a way to perceive life, a headspace, an attitude, a way to frame and filter and perceive everything through this lens of partying. Essentially, it's looking for positivity that transcends positivity. It's trying to say there's good days and there's bad days, but within all of that, it's still a party. And again, this doesn't make much sense. We can pick this apart very quickly. That's where a leap of faith is involved, because at some point you say, well, I'm just going to decide to feel good about this, even if I have absolutely no reason to feel good about it. That is the challenge. It's easy to be positive in a party when everything's good and you have a million reasons to be happy. It's when there's much darker, more challenging adversity facing us that it really comes down to that positive party mindset. And that's what I'm promoting. That is a sensation. It's a physical, spiritual sensation. It involves everything. Your mental capacity, however limited that may be, your emotional state. All of these things come into play in this rather intangible feeling. Now, I felt that feeling for the first time as a young child through music, where, this melody happened. I think actually the first time was one of my piano teachers playing a piece for me that they were working on. And I felt these chills going up and down my body, but I wasn't cold. I felt these sort of butterfly feelings in my stomach, but I wasn't really scared or nervous. I felt almost every emotion from happy to sad and everything in between combined and felt at once, yet I wasn't really in a particular mood. Someone asked me how I would have felt. I would have had a very hard time to describe that to them. Yet I felt it from this thing that had no words. It wasn't a song, it was just melodies. I didn't know what it was about. I didn't even know who wrote it at the time. It was just some piece. I can't even remember exactly what piece it was. And I actually thought the first time it was just a fluke. I said, oh, that's a strange feeling. Whatever that was. And then it happened again when they played another piece. Even more strongly, where even my tears welled up in my eyes. It was pure feeling, pure, the only way I can describe it, pure life force feeling. Whatever this intangible, indescribable, mysterious vitality that we each have that makes us living, that makes us different from something like a rock. We're made up much of the same essential material as a rock, but there's something that makes us alive, like a birdie or a squirrel or another animal that a rock doesn't have, and somehow we're able to identify that. We can't exactly figure it out. That's another very intriguing fact, that as much as science has uncovered so many of the mysteries of the world, we still don't even know exactly what life is. This experience that we're having, this encounter, this event that's happening to us and us to it, what is this thing? It's so intense and it's so up close and it's so pervasive that it's hard to even get enough perspective to consider it abstractly, to even investigate it. But it seems like through things like, for a lot of folks, including me, music, it gave me an awareness of that feeling. It pushed me back just far enough so I could see it and be excited about it and take note. And then go back and go for more. And I thought, well, maybe there's a way to make my whole life about that feeling, about getting into that feeling, about promoting that feeling, about serving that feeling, worshiping that feeling, celebrating that feeling in the face of all other things. And that's what partying became. Because for me, being alive did not necessarily feel so good. And I wasn't so convinced, even from an early age, that this was necessarily that great of an experience to be having. This thing called being alive. Now, I hadn't experienced anything else that I could remember. Obviously, I didn't exist at one point, and I have very little memory of that. I think it was, rather boring, but somehow I emerged like the rest of us and wasn't so sure that it was a good thing to have gone through. But at the other side of things, I thought, well, maybe, I wouldn't exist unless I was meant to in some way. And even if I'll never know one way or another if it's good or not to exist, maybe I could decide that it is. And maybe that's this thing, free will, that comes along with this life force feeling that humans seem to have a real special ability to manipulate, that we can decide some things without necessarily having all the proof, that we can make some decision. That I was thinking about this earlier today, that the glass being half full or half empty isn't nearly as interesting as the fact that we can just look and consider the glass in the first place. That there's good and there's bad, like that yin and yang, black and white spiral. That in itself is this beautiful thing. That positive and negative, they're both transcended by this thing that's more positive than either of them, which you could call super positivity or just partying. So I decided to just focus on that idea, and I'm promoting that idea with you here tonight. So we're going to continue on throughout tonight. I'll just give you a bit more information as to what I would like to happen, or what I imagined happening. We're going to proceed. We'll speak some more and come up with different ideas to talk about. And then I will open the floor to questions. And that part is very exciting for me because it involves someone other than myself. So I look forward to that a great deal. We have a microphone over here, and we'll get to that. I ask that the questions be relatable, just out of consideration and respect for everybody else here, that they engage us in this kind of universal life experience that we can all benefit from one way or another. And then I'll proceed over to that area afterwards, and we can hang out. So even if you don't get to ask your question or you don't want to ask it publicly, we can talk more or less one-on-one in that area over there. It's our time to be in a room together. And people have asked me what I hope someone would take away from an event like this. I don't have anything necessarily to offer that is new or groundbreaking in terms of some kind of revelatory concept. I want to remind myself, I'm here to cheer myself on, cheer you on, remind us all of this thing that we already know, but sometimes we doubt, and sometimes we lose track of, sometimes we get, it gets obscured by all the other things in life that can be very valuable and very worthy of attention as well. But I want to just confirm that our instinct to stay focused and wrapped up in pondering what life is actually maybe the meaning of life in the first place. If there is a meaning of life, it might be to wonder what the meaning of life is. And when not knowing or being able to find out, not running away from it or rolling one's eyes and scoffing and retreating, but to stay rigorously engaged. There will never be, in my opinion, some breakthrough that answers all the questions, that puts everything in perspective. Copping out and saying, well, I'm just not going to think about that anymore. That doesn't work either. It's this tireless effort. So I'm here, most of all, to encourage that. To stay as pumped up and dedicated to life and being alive and being worthy of this chance to exist as we can. And I'm doing it for myself too, because as I said, I don't have some special skill that allows me to feel better than anyone else. There's been a misunderstanding that I'm a positive person. Actually, someone who's been extraordinarily non-positive to the point of actually being very, very negative, and I've really struggled with these things. That's what motivated me to do all this stuff. And in that way, I'd like to think that all of what we might think of as our shortcomings, our weaknesses, they're all opportunities. They're all lead that can be turned into gold on the philosopher's stone. It's alchemy. It's a chance to transform yourself by embracing those weaknesses and saying, how can this propel me? How can this motivate me? How can I use this to my best advantage? Rather than trying to blot it out or numb it out or escape from it, and certainly not to feel so bad about it, but to be hard on yourself enough to motivate yourself to do something about it. And I wanted to try to feel better about existing, so I thought I'd focus on the things that were the most exciting. And it turns out you can actually get away with making a whole career out of this. So that is if nothing else. I was talking about pressure. I've started writing a new column that I believe will be premiering next week. I had written an advice column for 2 years for the Village Voice. And you're going to be aware of that. I ended it because I started noticing a lot of the questions were repetitive and a lot of the answers were heading in the same area. So I thought, well, sort of like an album of songs. I hope that they can be revisited over and over again. I've reread them and been pleased with how they held up. With this new column, I'm now just writing essays to no one, so I guess to myself and hopefully one of you will read it. When people were asking me about the advice column, they assumed that there was this kind of pressure to give advice, and I think again in the same spirit that I'm here, I am reaching the same way that anyone would be reaching out to me. I'm reaching out to you, and I'm reaching out to myself, and we're reaching together towards understanding. And I don't have any answer for anyone that I imagine that would have read that column that they wouldn't have already been aware of. I'm just trying to tap into that highest level of thinking that I can imagine. It's strange, actually, that we have this ability. We can imagine, like we would a wizard. What would a wizard do in this situation? If I could ask a wizard, that's how I'd answer these questions. Not even that I was a wizard, if I could take this question someone was asking me and ask someone who actually knew what they were talking about, what would they say? And then I would pretend to answer it from that point of view. And then I realized, wow, it would be actually great if I was strong enough to actually believe that and think that way myself. I got a bit overconfident at times and thought I actually could, and then I would, go out into the world and get instantly frustrated and annoyed and irritated and falter through weakness and realize that it took a lot more than desire to inhabit that mindset, but it was still there. And one of my main goals through all this work, and I hope by the end of 51 of these parties, I'll have reached just a little bit further there. I want to shrink that distance between that wizard's wisdom and my own first thought, my own first instinct. My own first instinct might be to sigh, to punch a wall, to get very, very depressed and sad. But then I think, well, what would the wizard do? Well, they probably wouldn't punch a wall. If they did have to break down a wall, they would probably use something more esoteric, like a wand. And they probably wouldn't sigh, because they just were beyond sighing. They had a good flow of oxygen in and out. They didn't need to take that exaggerated breath. And eventually, I do hope to attain that level of strength so that I can actually have that be my first mode of thinking. I've met people that are like that, or at least they convinced me that they were. And maybe that's the same thing. But I think there are people that have been born that are just naturally emotionally advanced. Some people are good at slam dunking a basketball. That's not one of my skills, but I've met people who can do it very easily, that can do it without much practice. Then there's other people that happen to be very emotionally advanced. There are people that are able to look out at the world and see it as a beautiful thing without straining to see it that way. These are people that I can learn from, and I try to see through their eyes a little bit and imagine what it's like to have those powers and think that maybe there's a way to get there, to shorten that distance between our highest potential and our first instinct, to fuse them together. And it's all these little tests, it's these little games that you can play throughout the day, and those in-between moments, like while you're driving from one place to another, traveling. I find that it happens a lot in airports. Those are my real proving ground for my ability to reach my highest level and quickly sink to a level that was lower than last time, or that I even imagined was possible. But it can start simply by an awareness that you didn't live up to your potential, and that takes a kind of patient, self-penetrating honesty that is usually quite painful. But it's painful in the way that exercise is. I think we all are familiar with that intense physical discomfort that comes from exertion. But deep down inside, we know that we're growing because of it. We know we're getting better, we're getting stronger, we're building up some kind of new ability, some kind of new threshold that we can push past again. So maybe that's like it's exercise for your soul to pass these tests, and they are tests. I think that that has been a very helpful mindset to look at these inconveniences, these irritations, these challenges, these bad times as tests to see, do I have the strength of character to make it through this and retain some shred of dignity, to be patient, to be calm, and not just act like you're patient, because that's usually what I will do. In line somewhere, for example, at the security check-in, and I notice at the airport there's a tendency to not realize that other people are there besides oneself, and that's a great skill to try to develop. Always trying to think that way, and not always succeeding. But you're in the line and you're noticing that someone is putting the tubs, the containers, long ways, and they're letting them back up quite a bit, and they're also loading their items in at the end or I'd say the beginning of the beltway, rather than pushing down towards the end, or perhaps looking to see if the person behind them has no items, they could just go in front, or who would never dare to cut in front without asking because they don't want to appear impatient, because they're trying to hold themselves to this high advanced level of what a wizard would do. And then I realized the whole thing was just a charade, because no one really would care, and even if they did, why would they care what I'm thinking? So this is all a game with myself. And then I'm pretending to trick myself to actually think that I'm acting patient. How can I actually be patient? Can I actually develop that skill? Can I actually be patient instead of just act patient? Maybe another 25, 30 years, we'll see. But I'm engaged in it. I almost wonder, and this might be sort of maybe a cop-out or make it too easy. I almost think there almost isn't such a thing as being a good person. Meaning, I don't know if you can really attain that in a definitive way. There could be extraordinary acts of selflessness that would earn you that lifetime status. That is possible. Such as saving someone's life, sacrificing your life for someone else. I think you pretty much are in the clear as far as good person status goes. But for so many of the rest of us who maybe we could even say are fortunate that we don't have to take such a leap all at once in one act, maybe the effort, the rigorous effort of wanting and working to become a good person is synonymous with being a good person. And that it's a bit frightening to think about that, because it feels like you're getting away with something. But I think it's so exhausting and such a constant internal pressure that you kind of deserve to have at least the idea of it counting as being a good person, because you're actually trying. And only each one of us will know if you're actually really trying. That's this penetrating self-honesty again. You can pick a little time during the day, perhaps while using the restroom, depending how long that takes you. It takes me usually a bit of time, so sometimes I'll think, while in that moment, or traveling, looking out the window, something where I can just sit and think. I'll try to think of all the worst things that I've ever done, and really reflect on them and really go into them. And it's not necessarily a fun thing. It's kind of fun, like having a nightmare, I guess, is kind of fun in a way. Meaning that there's no real fallout from it. It's not like I'm, in physical pain. No one is punching me in that moment. I'm sitting quietly and reflecting on my weakness. But then there's something quite exhilarating about it, because once you're there looking at it, it kind of loses its power in a very appealing way. You can break it down and you can think, okay, well, if it's that clear, maybe I really can not do that next time. And any time we have that opportunity to actually do the right thing, even if it's forced, it's a very thrilling opportunity. I was talking with my brother the other day. We were at a restaurant, and he was interacting with the waiter, and I noticed that when he placed his order, he didn't say please. And the waiter was very kind and certainly didn't react to that at all. Then later the waiter came back and asked him if he would like a refill on his beverage, which was a flavored Italian soda. They had a wide array of flavoring syrups at this restaurant, and I think he had gotten strawberry kiwi the first time. The waiter asked if he'd like a refill, and my brother said, yeah, sure, why not? And the waiter said, what flavor would you like? And my brother said, you know what, surprise me. And then the waiter said, okay, I'll come up with something, and left. And I was just shocked that not only was he sort of cavalier and playful with this waiter, but he didn't say please or thank you, not even once. I was outraged. And I thought maybe it would be best to not say anything. Then I thought better of that and decided to speak up and criticize him in front of everybody. I can't believe he didn't say please. And he said, I think at first maybe he wasn't entirely aware that he hadn't, but he was still surprised that I would bring it up. I said, we were raised better than this. Mom and Dad always taught us to say please and thank you. And he said, Andrew, just because you say please and thank you doesn't mean that I don't mean it. It's implied. You're just pretending to be polite. I actually am. And I said, you're absolutely right. He was 100% right. He actually is a nice person. I'm just pretending to be. Kind of put me in my place there. That was it. It's a similar situation. I've noticed this in hotels. And by the way, since this is the second of this series, The Power of Partying, this one's already entirely different than the first one. For better or worse, I can't say. I'm not judging it. I didn't do a lot of observational stuff like this. I also want to say I'm not a stand-up comedian, despite the fact that I am standing up right now. This is not actually meant to be funny. It's supposed to be fun. But thanks for laughing either way. Thank you. You know, it's exactly 9:30. I think that's the last time. I think that a half hour is a good portion for me rambling. So now I would like to ask you to ramble a bit. And we have this microphone up here. And any questions you have, if you want to talk about life, it can certainly be topical. I don't have a lot of strong opinions to share. I'm curious to what you think about these things, because I think the best thing about something like this for me, and thank you again so much for coming. It's not so much that it means so much to me, it means so much to this feeling, this life force feeling. You are here for partying, I am here for partying, so on behalf of partying, thank you so much for coming. Hello, sir.
Good evening.
How are you?
I've been better, but it's a good night. Great opening.
Well, that's very kind of you. Very generous. I noticed your arm is in a sling. Is that why it could be better of a night?
Yeah, I had a bad left turn.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that.
But it's almost healed now, but this is really like a visual thing. Like, don't come at me on this side. I'm not quite healed yet, but I'm not in pain. So thank you for caring about that.
Oh, you're very welcome. I was stung by a bee once and had to wear a sling because my arm got swollen up. I was like 5, 6 years old, so.
It was an experience. It's part of who you are now. So.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Okay. Mike, what I wanted to ask you about is talk a little bit more about the idea of effort. I'm just going to make a statement about that, and I will have a question. But what you started out by saying, the idea that Andrew W.K. actually has to make effort to be as positive as you appear to be on stage all the time. I mean, like you said, this is your career. This is what you do. But the idea that you could actually be negative is kind of humbling to me. The idea that you have to work at it. So along those lines, what do you say to the people? Like you're implying that partying takes effort. Sometimes there's going to be work leading up to it.
That's why it's partying hard.
Right. Okay. Early on in life that helped you give focus, but not everyone has that focus. So what about the effort to find a focus that gives you personal meaning? And then individuals are different. For you it was music, but it may not be for someone else.
That's true. And thank you for asking that, and that's a very good point, because one of the reasons I got into speaking, for example, or doing lectures or writing, was because people said, I really don't like your music, but I saw an interview you did, and I got that feeling from it. And I said, okay, well, this is encouraging. This is good. Because as you said, I'm here to serve that feeling. The music is a way to that feeling. For some folks, somehow or another, maybe someday talking like this, we'll get to that feeling. Writing can get to that feeling as long as I want to be a tool to that feeling, to be used to get to that feeling. I don't even want to be a person. I want to be a tool that is useful, like a hammer. You can't get much more useful than that. So I'm like a less complex version of a hammer, basically. I never dreamed actually of doing this. I don't just mean speaking, I mean performing, entertainment, music. When I was learning piano, that was like learning how to read or tie a shoe or to ride a bike. It was a very primal skill that just became part of life, but it never occurred to me to become a professional shoe tire or a professional walker or bike rider, although people probably do. There probably is a professional shoe tire out there. I imagine for fashion shows, the models probably need someone to tie their shoes at times. That is something I could do as another line of work. You're always going to have a plan C, D, and a plan E. But somewhere along the line, these things that were sort of second nature and just part of who I was, it started to, they called out. And I said, no, I have no interest in that. I don't want to do that. I wanted to be a scientist. I want to be a fashion designer. Those didn't pan out so well. So then I thought, well, maybe I'm pushing against resistance. Maybe I should do the thing that I naturally do anyway. But it just didn't seem possible. It really seemed absurd to think that you could just be yourself and that was enough. It always seemed like you had to do something extra. And all I can say is that destiny pulled. I didn't push. I didn't have a dream that I pushed to. Destiny pulled. And the strange thing about that process is you end up doing a lot of things that you don't really like to do, but you're supposed to do. I'm here because the power of partying compels me to be here. You know, I would have not had the nerve to dream up something like this, the gall to think that I could do this or try to do it. So I would say my advice is to listen to that very faint yet persistent destiny that's calling, and don't doubt it, because it's almost the crazier that it is, the crazier that dream is that you don't even dare to dream. That's the one that's going to call and pull you there. And if you let yourself be pulled or pushed, however you want to get there, I guess, it will do the rest of the work for you. I turned myself over to the party gods, and I'm doing their bidding. Thank you. I hope your arm heals up. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I'm scheduling a hysterectomy.
Oh, wow.
And I really wanted to talk to you tonight because I want to know what the purpose of hope is, because I feel like this hysterectomy is me giving up on hope. I don't feel like anyone is going to want to date a 35-year-old woman who just had a hysterectomy. So, yeah, please.
Yeah, I doubt that's true, but you'd be surprised, yeah.
Okay. Please let me know, if I give up, will I feel free? Will I be able to be myself? Or should I hold on to hope, and why should I have any hope?
Thank you for asking this. Thank you. That takes a lot of courage just to ask any questions, especially when it's so personal. I think hope it's one of those words that we hear a lot, like love. It's so vast in its ramifications. I think that it is an active form of perpetually leaping towards faith. Meaning, I think you feel hope when there's no reason to. Or when you feel otherwise, like there's no reason to. It's a choice. And that's why it takes some kind of effort. If you didn't have to put effort into feeling hope, then it wouldn't really be hope. It'd just be like, yeah, I feel really good about this. But it's when you don't feel so good that this idea of hope comes into play. When we feel frightened, when we feel like we're facing a challenge that we cannot meet, we turn to these areas outside of ourselves. And the strange thing, it's like you're reaching for a higher kind of power, a power that doesn't reside in you, because you feel like you don't have it. You feel like you don't have the strength, so you reach for something more, wherever you can get it, to another person even. And yet, it's that reaching out actually that pulls you deeper into yourself. And the deeper you reach into yourself for strength, the more you can then also reach out to the rest of the world. It's a strange thing. Because you think in a way that hope can almost even become self-involved, because you're trying to exceed yourself. You're exceeding your own limits for strength. And yet, it's that very act of turning inward that allows you to bond more with everybody else. I would say that these challenges in life, as a mindset, we can choose to look at them, even if we don't believe it. We can choose to look at them as a test to see what we're really made of. And we can do it. We can overcome them. We can get through them. But we don't get through them to get it over with. We get through them to become more than we were. And it seems odd, there's a paradox there, that this event that might seem like it's stripping our life away can actually add something more to it. But I think the process does, because the only way to get through it is to grow as a person, to become more than you once were, to become more of yourself, really. Not even a different person, to become more of yourself. So hope is a simple word that I think encapsulates all those efforts. And it's very pure, and you can visualize that word, you can say it almost as a meditative mantra-like quality and sound to the very word itself, and you hold on to hope. Because what else are you gonna do? I hope everything goes okay. Stay strong. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Pretty cool. I'm fairly cool.
Oh, cool. Yes, yes. Well, thank you to the North Door for the very good air conditioning.
It's a real bonus.
It is very nice. It's considerate.
There's one thing I have to say before I say anything else, and that is that I was an intern at Vice magazine when your first album really hit.
Wow. 2002.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
a very long time ago.
14 years.
It feels like a real time chasm for me. I don't know about you. But I remember one time being sent to do some writing at a desk, and I moved one of your bloody t-shirts off of it.
Thank you for doing that. It's best for it not to be on the desk.
I mean, I think that the other guys at Vice also were happy to thank the woman for moving a bloody t-shirt off of the desk to get some work done.
It could have been contagious. I could have been diseased at that point. You know, blood is very cold.
Yeah, it was probably pretty crazy.
And there was definitely dead skin cells and other bacteria on it.
Lots of danger. I know. I've been there before.
Okay, well.
But what I want to talk to you about tonight is something that's a little bit different. So I was a teacher for a very long time, and I worked in a school that was really unhappy. Have you guys ever been in a place that like a school feels like shit? Yeah. And so one of the things that I tried to do to encourage my colleagues to become more comfortable and happier was to invite them to a party. Because I thought, well, if you guys come over to my house, you'll see that like my shit is normal, and there's beer and good music, and like we'll have a good time, and maybe you'll be friends with the softball coach at the end of the night. And the turnout sucked. Like you guys, I'm pretty cool. And I invited people to this party with like a mini flyer in their teacher mailbox, which is like unheard of.
So what is the question?
My question. Thanks, Star. Thank you. Is like, what do you do in those situations where you know that partying is the answer, and everybody will feel better at the end of whatever cool hangout you have?
Well,
But you don't have takers.
I wouldn't take it personally if they didn't go. I wouldn't have any expectation about anyone showing up. I didn't have any expectation that anyone would show up here. I'm glad that you did, and I'm glad that everyone did. But if they hadn't, and for all those that didn't show up, I don't hold it against them. You know, when you start to put pressure on people like that, it takes the party out of the party. So the party, it could have been part of the party spirit in a way. The fact that they weren't even there. And hopefully, I mean, it sounds like at least someone showed up. Did one person besides yourself arrive?
Yeah.
Okay, well then you just put all of it, all that joy and party energy that you put into the rest of the folks gets all concentrated and soaked right into that other person. And that's how it was meant to be, because that's how it happened. So focus on that. Because no one could have showed up. So yeah, you do seem very, very cool. So thank you for telling us about that.
Great. You're welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
All right. So the day that I realized that you were doing this, you posted about it on Facebook. I woke up that morning and I was just crying before I got in bed.
Wow.
I was
Sorry to hear that.
overwhelmed and just devastated for no good reason, which my boyfriend very quickly pointed out to me. I have a really good life, I have a really good relationship, I have a really good job, you know, everything is going really well, but sometimes, like, I just have depression. And I know that, like, I've heard that and read that you deal with the same thing. So how do you deal with waking up that way? Like waking up just overwhelmed?
Well, as many people, maybe you've tried this, I sometimes just try not to wake up. I just put that off. that has worked. And I'll test it by waking up a little bit, and I wait to see if that feeling sinks in, and when it's set, it's like, okay, there it is, and then I cancel out everything and go back into being unconscious, which is an incredible gift that we can do that. And I never really liked the daytime, so I have tried to stay awake more during the night. That's helped me quite a bit. It seems odd because it does seem very counter nature to flip it, but I flipped it, and that's helped me a great deal. I also don't care for summer and spring very much. I think that spring is like early morning, summer is like midday, blazing hot, sun just no shadows. Fall is like twilight, which I really like a great deal, which is why I'm touring now. And then winter is like night, which is the best of all, just total desolation.
Summer, the nights are still warm.
That's true. That is true.
I love that.
So,
So what makes you wake up in the morning and defeat that feeling?
well, I have a cause now. I have something propelling me. And there was times when I was alone. I didn't have a great relationship. Didn't have a job that I really liked very much. Still had some good friends and family. Still had a lot of great privileges and opportunities. But that sometimes wasn't enough. I had to find some mission. And that's when I got into partying. I said, I have to have something propelling me that I'm working towards, that's counting on me, that I want to do so badly, that I want to do more badly than I want to feel bad, that I want to do more badly than I want to be afraid or scared or nervous or anything else, to have some higher calling, even if I just made it up that day, to say I can't be weak, I can't be this version of Andrew because I have this to do. And if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. I have to be more than I am. And then eventually you actually forget that you ever weren't that, or you tuck it way back in your mind and you get in that habit. However, I will say that to this very day, earlier today, I felt terrible. I didn't take it too seriously, and I was really excited that this was happening later because I knew that this would have me up too. I'm here for very self-involved reasons myself. I'm trying to get cheered up and stay cheered up, keep engaged in these activities. But for as long as I can remember, every time I woke up, there was a sense that something was very wrong, and it was a very intense feeling. And when I would first wake up, it really would seem like, oh, it's not quite there yet, and there'd be a little opening, and then it would sink back and you're like, okay, right, this is how it feels to be me. Now I remember. And then it's with you for the rest of the day. Sometimes you could distract yourself, but it was always lingering. Sometimes it was up front and just hovered over everything. But I decided now that's just the feeling of being alive. And if you try to squash out that feeling, you might as well just squash out existence itself, which I'm not prepared to do yet. So I'm embracing that and saying, this is my motivation. The worst feelings I have are what are going to make me try to overcome them. And there's a joy, there's a privilege to be able to overcome them. Part of me wouldn't wish to not have those feelings, because I certainly wouldn't be here talking about this if I didn't feel bad. It's a strange paradox, but try to embrace it all. Embrace it all in a big party hug.
For the sake of your partying, I mean, you should know that everybody that's here tonight and everybody that's going to be here at every single one of your shows through all 51 states really appreciates you, and like you mean a lot to us.
Hello.
Hi.
Adam.
Yeah.
Adam was one of our contest winners tonight, so congratulations again, Adam. This beautiful t-shirt, tank top.
I was wondering what techniques you use to measure your own progress and to try to become a better person.
That's a great question. I've never thought about that at all. I I would like to have said it, oh, I can tell that I used to be worse. I guess, yeah, I used to be worse. That's how I can tell. Or maybe I used to not feel so bad about my shortcomings and not be as aware of them.
Because, you can try to be a better person, but you have your highs and you have your lows.
Definitely.
So
Contrasts.
when you're at your highs, when you're at your lows, what do you use to gauge that you're still on the right track?
Well, how cruel I am to others. If I'm able to hold back from lashing out at others. That used to be a great source of joy for me. Was trying to really inflict just psychological misery on other people, not so much punching and things like that, but punching and kicking I didn't have the nerve for, so I would try to trick people in very malevolent ways. And it wasn't so much to even make them cry, it was to make them wonder, why would someone do this? I just hope they didn't know that it was me that did it. They always figured out that it was. I haven't done that in a long time. And I've gotten close. And then I say that this isn't the right thing to do. Sometimes I think of a guardian angel, or even my mom, and she would cry if she saw me even thinking about doing this. So I try to cancel the urge and the thought, and then if I do it, I have to just make sure she doesn't find out. But the guardian angel sees it either way, and they're just so disappointed. You know what I mean? They're just like, we went through all this over and over and over again. I also think that the times when I've really been punished by karma, or however you want to look at it, that's made things much more black and white. I used to steal a lot. Not things that I really needed, but just I would have a disdain for a shopkeeper and intentionally try to take their belongings without paying for them. Then I was mugged at knife point, so then I stopped doing that. So I'm very thankful to that mugger. One, for not cutting me in the process, and two, for teaching me a lesson. It was a lesson learned. The other day I learned a lesson that you shouldn't eat a lot of salty food immediately before going on stage because it causes adult onset bloating. And I was quite frustrated that I did that. I mean, if I had thought through it, I probably would have said, maybe this isn't the best thing to do, eat all this popcorn right now. It was very appetizing, and I hadn't eaten breakfast yet, and then I saw these photos after the show, and I had a rounded face, a moon face, essentially, well, more like a Jupiter face. And I said, you know what? I know exactly why that happened. No one forced me to eat that popcorn. Let it be a lesson to me, and let it be a lesson to us all. Adult male bloating is real, folks. And I think one of the most satisfying things we can do is to learn a lesson. Not the kind of lesson of, yeah, I learned that women are evil, so I just cut them out of my life entirely. That's not a real lesson. But the kind of lesson is, okay, I got my heart broken, I'm gonna stay strong and return and keep an open heart. That's the lesson I'm gonna learn. I'm not gonna eat salted popcorn. And there's a satisfaction, I mean I will, but just not immediately before going on stage. There's a satisfaction in making a mistake and then actually being able to extract something from it. The frustration definitely comes when somebody doesn't go exactly right and you really don't know why. That is confounding mystery. But you know what? I learned to embrace that mystery as well. That sometimes you're not going to have all the answers. Maybe all of that is a sign of some kind of progress or complete failure. I haven't been able to decide yet. I'm just very confused.
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you for being here. Oh, hello there, sir. Excellent T-shirt. Thank you very much. Quite a rare shirt there, Jane Doe from Converge, and I Get Wet, and we did that to raise money for an animal shelter. So thanks to Converge for doing that.
I have kind of two questions.
Yes, sir.
You said there was you used to feel bad a lot and not have any kind of control over that or whatever. And my question is, was there an event to cause the shift into, was it music, was it being mugged? It's maybe kind of a personal question. I don't know if you want to be that personal or not, but that's my question. Was there an event, was there something that made you decide consciously to go from the negative outlook to the positive outlook?
Thank you for asking that. Even though, sure, there was many small ones, some that you just mentioned. There was also this awareness that if I continued on that way, that I would probably die or someone else would. And that became more and more crystallized, where it didn't seem like some crazy thing. I started to see how that really could be, because you become debauched in a way. You kind of become, you build up a tolerance to your own misery, and you have to keep increasing it to have that kind of visceral impact that it used to. And I also could see through it. I could see that what made me angry wasn't the fault of that thing that was making me angry. It was my fault. I thought I was all strong because this thing pissed me off, and it was actually me who was being very weak. I would see somebody, I wouldn't like the hat they had on, and I would at first think, well, that's because the hat sucks. And now I realize, well, maybe you're just being a little too picky about this hat, Andrew. You should just tone down a bit. But I still have to go through that process. But at least there's some process there. That's been gradual. That's just through rigorous work. I think, to be honest, the big change happened for me at 9/11 in New York. That was right as my album was coming out, my first album. And everything was put into this very stark relief in a way that I had never felt. I'd imagined and sort of had considered these kinds of extremes in life, but had never been faced with it. And I hadn't really thought about that even until now, that probably had, and it still had, a real impact, that anything that I can do to try to go towards the light, that has to be the answer. That has to be what we're supposed to do. Because the alternative is just, it's not worthy of a human being.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking me.
I was going to ask you if you practice any sort of meditation.
I tried it. It was very physically exhausting. I never anticipated that. I sat still. Sitting still was harder than any other kind of exercise I'd ever done. I was completely drenched in sweat, complete cramps. If you've ever tried it, even just sitting in a chair without moving for 15 minutes, just soaked and bruised even. I guess sort of bed sores, essentially. And full body numbness and all that. But I did try, and it was interesting. I feel like I'm meditating now in a way.
Something like that going on.
Yeah. So it's an active, passive concentration of some effort. It's rigor. I think that I keep coming back to that idea of rigor, that you wrestle perpetually. There was a gentleman I really respect, I still respect, I respected a great deal, and I was asking him similar questions as to what we're talking about now. And he said, well, you wrestle with these things and you just cast them aside and get on with life. I have not figured out how to cast them aside. I feel like the search for the truth is the truth in a very strange, paradoxical way. And finding any kind of answer there would end the search, and then it's what are we supposed to do then? That's why I think it's so interesting how badly so many of us actually want answers, or act as though. We see many people act as though they have it all figured out. So then they can do what? What's the point of activity at that point? To make money and purchase things and rest, which they make a good argument for that sometimes. And of course, we've seen that there's still just as much turmoil in the minds of those that have accumulated and achieved great things in their eyes. Those that seem to think that they're the least ignorant are usually the most ignorant. I think it's a blessing to be ignorant and to realize it and to stay completely engaged in trying to search without necessarily having to find anything. But that takes a lot of discipline.
You played on September 11th, 2002 in Athens, Georgia.
I remember that very well. We did a moment of noise, right?
Yes.
I said a moment of silence, a moment of noise, because no one will stop our partying, especially terrorists.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for being here. Welcome. Thank you very much for being here.
I kind of know how you sort of accidentally fell into being the god of partying. I sort of accidentally fell into running a toy store.
Oh, wow.
Sort of what I do. So I'm in this weird, unique position in the world where I am not an authority figure to kids, nor am I like a family member or something. I'm just like this person who's supposed to exemplify fun.
Like a Santa.
Yeah, sort of. Like a consumerism Santa. My question to you is, what can I do to distribute the message of partying to all these kind of impressionable kids who, otherwise might not have access to someone who can do that for them?
Well, first of all, I think running a toy store absolutely counts as partying. It definitely was a dream of mine at a certain point. Not just because I like playing with toys, but I like the phenomenon of toys, the fact that something like a toy could exist. And I think it's a real challenge for quote-unquote grown-ups and adults, people that have passed the age of childhood to continue to play. And not just with toys or adult version of toys in all manner of speaking, but to keep riffing and engaging themselves on a level that doesn't achieve anything other than play. And that's what's so strange, because so much of the work we do is supposed to allow us to have this free time to then do what? So if we can play without even having to have any particular outcome, I think it's sort of like what we're trying to work for in a way. I think the thing that had the biggest impact on me as a younger person, meeting older people that I respected and looked up to, like Santa, like a person in a band. I remember my 5th grade teacher's daughter was dating a young man who was in a rock band. He worked at a bike store, and he looked amazing, and everyone was just sort of enthralled with this guy and also very scared of him. There was also next door to that bike store, actually, there was a pet store that only employed, for some reason, hardcore crust punks with very intense, Liberty spikes and nose rings made out of padlocks and things like that. And when you're 8 and 9 years old, that is very frightening. That was almost more frightening than any other type of person, because they put so much effort into doing that. They didn't just happen to be scary, like an old person sometimes was scary to me, but they got that way without even trying, you know what I mean? This hardcore punk really was trying to do that. And I remember going to this pet store, and my mom would have to kind of drag me in there if we needed to run an errand, and I was so scared just because of the people in there. And they were the nicest people out of anybody. And they went out of their way to be nice, almost to make up for how intense they look, perhaps. Or they just happened to be nice, because they usually are. And that young man who was in the band that went to the bike store next door, he was so kind. He was so kind. And at that age, if someone had not been kind, I probably thought that would have been cool too, in a way. Like, oh, he was tough and he's like a bad guy. That's cool. He's like a big guy. So to just be kind has such an impact, not just because it's warm and it's inviting and it's gentle to a child, but because it shows them that you can grow up and actually be like that. And as a role model to be kind, it's I still have that happen. With people that I admire, when I see how kind they are, and it's even if it's like I pretend to be kind, it's still better than nothing. I think that can make it, one interaction like that can change a kid's life, a young person's life. Thank you for asking that. Thanks for running a toy store. Hello there, sir.
Hey, what's up?
How are you?
Pretty good. So I'm a big fan of your radio program.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, it got me through like a lot of hard times.
Are you Powder Cake Greg?
No, I'm Crunchies G.
Okay, pardon me.
But yeah, like I really like your program. It was great. Like a lot of things like that you said earlier reminded me of your radio program.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And it's great to hear it over and over again, because it's very reinforcing, right? But my question is, I'm going on a road trip tomorrow back home to Mexico, and it's gonna be a long trip. It's gonna be 6 hours, and I usually do get like anxiety and like depression. And I was wondering, like, if I have to deal with the problem, right? You know, like I'm gonna be staring at the road with music, and I'm looking outside. Like, I've been trying to like deal with all my problems with like either like breathing exercises, maybe thinking about it. Do you tackle your problems like just going full headfirst into it? You know what I mean? Like, let's say you're thinking about this thing, you know it's like, this is the root of the depression, right? Do you just go into it, like into that black ocean, or do you like try to move around it? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. I think it's case by case. I don't think there's a formula that I found or a method. Now, I will say, out of respect for all the ways of dealing with anything, that I'm just providing one way. I actually don't think that whatever I say means very much at all. But meaning also that there's medical professionals, there's all different ways of treating these things on pharmaceutical levels, etc. I've just happened to go by this path that these are fights we're meant to have. But that's just one, maybe I'll change my mind someday, I don't know. I've enjoyed diving into them, but that doesn't mean it's made it any easier.
Right.
In fact, I think a lot of times it's probably made it a lot harder. I've also sublimated by exercise. That's probably been the most, besides music, the most reliable form. And by exercise, I also count playing concerts, because anything that's physical exertion. But people say, well, the reason that works is because it's releasing endorphins and it's changing your brain chemistry. That's fine. It's also achieving something at the same time. So that, I think, being physically active definitely, I've noticed, has made a difference. Anything that can make me smile or laugh, that's why I bow down to any memory that will make me laugh, a friend that can bring that out of me instantly without even trying, any little video clip. I mean, those things that sometimes people take for granted or don't take that seriously. I mean, they're not because they're funny, but they're as serious as can be in terms of funniness. I take that type of nonsensical joy very seriously. And that's what I love about it, is I can really feel like, as bad as I could ever imagine feeling, and then feel doubly bad because there's no real quote-unquote reason to be feeling that way, and I can look out at all these great things I have to do and all these opportunities and then feel even worse because one, I'm feeling bad, and then two, I don't have the energy to go and do any of these things because of how bad. And then I'll watch, a Key and Peele skit, and everything's changed. The ideas are still there, but the feeling is flipped.
Right.
And I bow down to those things. Anything that you can turn to that's reliable like that really works like that. Like, again, out of respect for comedians, I would never ever go into that realm. But that art form of reminding us that humor adds it's not the solution, but it certainly sweetens the process. It takes away some of that anguish and that truly physical pain of life in a very important way. It's like the spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. It makes the whole process of growth a little bit more manageable. So I would, keep smiling. I used to force myself. My mom said, just smile. If you have to force it, I would look in the mirror and the eyes would be full of pain,
Right.
and dark and angry. But eventually, it would look so ridiculous to hold that for 35 seconds that I eventually would smile, and I think, okay, well, maybe things aren't so bad. But sometimes I think you just try to without setting it aside, you try to transcend the whole thing. Just don't stop. That's my main thing. I just don't stop. Even when I feel really, really bad, I know deep down inside that I can keep going. And I try to think of other people that would, give anything to have these chances that I have, and try to think again that I'm representing this thing and I can't let it down, and there's people counting on me, and party gods are counting on me, and Andrew, you can't blow this, and I use any trick I can have in the arsenal to keep going, but just whatever you do, don't stop. Just don't quit.
All right. Thank you so much.
Have a good trip. Have a good drive tomorrow.
I just wanted to thank you. Like a few years ago for South by, you came to play your first album.
Yes, 2012.
Yeah, I think 2012. Yeah. In that concert, it was amazing. Like you said, like that physical exertion. I also find like that release like really does help me too. But actually, in your show, I remember I was crowd surfing and my keys and my wallet fell in the concert in the pit.
Oh no.
And I got out and I was like, oh my god, it's missing. And I come back, and this is actually one of the best moments of my life, I think, like a highlight, because I came back and I felt like, I told like people, like, hey guys, like my keys on the floor.
In the middle of the show?
In the middle of the show, and like people were like, guys, everyone, keys. And a lot of people around me were looking until like this one girl was like, I have some keys right here. And she gave them to me. And it must have been when you were like playing She Is Beautiful or something. And I couldn't believe it. It was like such a great moment. I was like, I can't believe this happened. Like, humanity's great. She gave me the keys. You're playing your first album. It was an amazing moment. And it really like, it was a great highlight for me.
I'm glad you got them back. Goodwill towards men and women. Always return items. If you ever find anything, always return it. Don't take something as yours, you know?
And I'll tell at the Cedar concert.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you very much for being here.
And at the end of the show, like we couldn't find it.
So one of the things you said earlier about always be better, the Latin motto for my university was Meliora, which is Latin for always better. And I've always sort of carried that with me above pretty much anything else from my college is always fucking better.
Great, what are they, is that a maxim? Is that what those are called?
Something like that.
Okay.
The question I wanted to ask was, I'm trying to build material for, in some respects, for some stand-up, for some open mics, playing music stuff. What is your advice for just hyping myself up to put myself out there?
Just do it. I mean, I try to, up there as I'm hearing that intro music start, part of the music was getting me really excited, and part of it was like, wow, each passing millisecond of this song is just counting down to this thing that I'm gonna have to go do, that no one's forcing me to do, that I chose to do. Why am I doing it? I can't even express the kind of terror. It's an amplification of that same sense that something is very wrong that I feel at all times. It's just brought right up to the front, and yet I do it. And I can't explain why. Well, there's no why would anyone do these things that don't seem so appealing? But I will tell you this, I've never met a performer that says, oh yeah, right before on stage, I just, the greatest feel, I'm just gonna go out there. Well, actually, maybe there are some people, like maybe Tony Robbins, he does seem like that.
Positive.
Yeah, maybe a few other folks I have met seem very confident at all times. But Pavarotti, he said that he literally, he would vomit before he would go on, completely devastated, and yet he did it. So I really do believe that those feelings add dynamics to life. Not all the intense feelings in life are supposed to be intensely good feelings. I think that there's real power in those intense feelings one way or another. I mean, I think about music. We listen to intensely sad songs, we listen to intensely angry songs, we listen to intensely, joyful songs. It's same with movies. We watch movies that are very sad, that are very violent, all these different things because we want that full range. So, but when it comes to a person, we just want this, like, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. So we can handle that jarring feeling. And we know that if we can sort of almost watch it like from third person, observe the whole thing happening as it's happening to us, we will get through it. And just allow yourself to feel it. Because this is it, this is life. It's actually happening. We're not building up to it, and we're not coming off of it. We're in the thick of it, and someday it's gonna be winding down, and we'll think, boy, I wish I had even more of those intense moments. So go for them, let them happen. And if they're happening all on their own, even better. Just say like, wow, I'm really getting to be alive right now. I can tell because I feel like I'm alive. So when people say, oh, I feel so alive, it's not always just because I feel so great and on top of the world. Take it whatever way you can get it.
All right.
And I hope your performing goes very well. Yes, we'll take a few more, and then I will proceed to this area over there, and we can continue talking and partying. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. May I ask your opinion about something? This goes for everybody?
Yeah.
I thought this time to put the microphone for questions a bit further back.
Yeah,
would you have felt more comfortable if it was right up here?
I'm not sure. The last thing that you said, though, made me calmer. Because I was like, oh, I'm about to be talking in front of all of these people.
Well, now I'm feeling that, okay. I just put myself in your position, and I know what that feeling is like. No, it's good, it's good.
Thank you for having us to your party.
Thank you very much for attending. Thank you for making it a party.
So, earlier today I was at work, and I work at a super corporate company. Everyone's in like pleated pants and golf shirts, and we were all talking about what we were doing later, and I was like, I'm going to WK, thinking like one person would know what I was talking about at least. Nobody knew, because hey, you're talking pleated pants and golf shirts, okay, guys?
I have worn pleated pants and golf shirts as well, and I enjoyed it very, very much.
I mean, it's like 100-year-old dudes, you know what I'm saying?
It had a lot of give in it.
Audience. Hey, it's
a balloon seat.
In the football region as well. So you know.
No, I was just joking.
It's like a different demographic, right?
Yeah, of course. Most people don't know that I exist, and that's probably for the best.
Trying to understand. So I've been into you since like 2002.
Thank you very much.
And the whole thing. So I tried to start explaining what you're all about to them, and I went back to the beginning, and it was like word vomit, and I tried really hard, and everybody was trying to make sense of it. So I was curious how you would explain you to a bunch of like dudes and pleated pants.
Thank you for trying to, and thank you for spreading the good word, and most of all, thank you for being so dedicated and being part of this since it started. It really does mean an incredible amount to me. I think a lot of people, from my own experience too, I get into something and maybe it lasts for a few weeks, months, maybe years, but 14 years, that's no joke, so thank you very, very much. I would say, you know that feeling when you're just like on the top of a roller coaster on the first day of summer and you're just like, yeah! It's like, okay, this guy's whole life is dedicated to making that feeling, conjuring up that feeling. I should say though, some people don't like roller coasters. Some people really don't like summer. Some people don't like raising their arms up over the air. I'm not going to name names, but there was a gentleman, a musician, who actually shares the same first name as I do, and I had the chance to meet him at a festival. I asked him for a high five, and he says, "I don't do high fives." I said, "You know what? They really do exist." And I respected that he was honest and that he had the dignity to not high five when he really didn't want to. So he knows who he is.
I, for one, don't like roller coasters either. So.
Hey, that's all right. Do you like round and round rides?
No, they make me puke.
Okay. Do you like log flumes?
That's like the waterfall thing. And you're in the log, right?
Okay, let's.
Oh no, it's a boat.
Yeah. No, that's the pirate ship. Let's say. Yeah. Do you like Small World ride at Disney? It's a slow ride.
I've never been to Disney World.
Okay, it's in the water.
I've had a deprived childhood. You should know.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's okay.
Well,
anyway.
Do you like the idea of roller coasters?
Yes.
Okay, well that's just as good.
A select few. Sorry, guys.
No, it's good. This is a good way to end.
First of all, or last of all, thanks for being here. You're awesome. I came out here for some positivity, so
it's a privilege.
Hopefully I'll get at least that. And I don't really know why I'm up here. I don't really have a super big question.
That's okay.
The tattoos?
Yes.
I mean, there's got to be a story behind it, right?
What?
What's the story behind the tattoos?
I have these line tattoos. I started by giving them to myself. This was the first. Actually, the first one was here, which is just a dot. You can't really see it. I got a sewing machine needle where the hole is in the tip of the needle.
Yeah.
With the sharp part. I balled up thread in that area, soaked it in India ink, and began to stab, press, and push into the flesh. And after about, I don't know, a half hour, I had a line that long. And I said, okay, well, I'm gonna start a different line now because I guess I'll change it up. And I started this one, and then I said, this is just taking too long, and it's also very boring. So I stopped, and then they just stayed like that for a while, and I got a few more done professionally where the person was able to do it in about 10 seconds, which was really amazing. But as far as what they mean, I wanted a tattoo very badly, and I had met a tattoo artist when I was around 20 years old, who I talked about getting a big back piece. He said, we'll come up with it, it's gonna be a big back piece. I said, I want something on a scroll, like a pirate's scroll, some kind of maxim, right? Some kind of slogan or something. And some skeletons, and then at one point earlier than that, I was thinking about getting a Tweety bird or something, because I had a friend that had a Tweety bird. There was so many things you could get. That was the problem. I started to realize this, and the closer I got to actually getting something, the more I would think, well, what about getting something instead, or what about that? So
I think Travis Barker kind of patented the whole like body thing.
he has a lot of them, yes. And yes, and he had a lot before other people had a lot, that's true. He's also a great drummer. So anyway, then I just thought, okay, well, I'll get a tattoo that doesn't mean or represent anything. And the only thing I could think about that, other than nothing, was a line. So that's what they don't mean anything.
Is there a reason why the right one's thicker?
Well, this one got infected. There was one here that then Kesha, the musical artist Kesha, added to. And it was not her fault, but it did get infected. It was done with a safety pin, and I take responsibility for the infection. My skin was, filthy, basically. So then I got that, added to because there was a big scar there. And then, I don't know, the other ones, I guess. This one, like the line was a little bit, I picked at it when it was healing initially, so then...
I'm bad at that.
Yeah, it had an itchy quality, and then it was missing pieces of ink, so people thought, oh, I think it spells a word. I see what you did here, there's a word. I said, no, there's no word, it's just a line. So then I covered it up with, make it thicker, and then people said, oh, it's like a ribbon. I see because the edge. And then I said, you know what, this is the game. This is what starts to happen. And then you get another one, and then you go back to fix that one, and then someone says some comment, like how it looks like confetti, or like Sharpies and things like that, so I just stopped, and it's the closest thing to not having any tattoos at all.
Do you plan on getting any more?
Huh? No, because I tried that, and now I'm moving on. I always admire other people's tattoos, and it's something I get to live vicariously through so many other amazing tattoos, and imagine what it would be like to have one, and then actually not have it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Which is good too. Yeah, thank you very much for asking.